When pushing a superstar, it's hard for management to know if they've got the next Hulk Hogan on their hands or the next Curtis Axel, and sometimes it's just easier to dress one up as the other. Some wrestlers carve their own path, create an instantly iconic look, oft imitated, never bettered. And some wrestlers are forced to dress up like those wrestlers and then lie to themselves that everything's okay. And to prove there's a secret third way, some wrestlers like Damien Sandow, who just happens to be wrestling for WCPW this week, hey check it out, awesome, turn their mimicry into an absolute art form. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are the 10 biggest impersonators in wrestling history. Number 10, Goldust and Blue Dust. Here is a picture of Goldust. Here is a picture of Blue Dust. Really drink that picture in. Drink it all down and drown on it. Goldust himself was no stranger to the odd impression, appearing as Vader Dust, Hunter Dust, China Dust, all of which are excellent names for bands. However, in early 1999, the universe ate himself when Goldust began to be mimicked by the Blue Meanie, who covered himself in paint and did sexual things in Now I Want to Die. The two men had a paint-smeared match at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre before Bluey joined Goldie and started calling him Mommy. Number 9, Sin Cara and Sin Cara. Sin Cara never really stood a chance. He used to wrestle under the same lighting they use in Turkish brothels, and he botched his first ever ring entrance. The lad was f***ed from the start. A few months after debuting, he was suspended for 30 days for his first violation of the wellness policy. That was fast, but the character returned before the month was out, this time with the wrestler formerly known as Hunico under the mask. Then, the original Sin Cara returned to challenge this imposter who started calling himself Sin Cara Negro. The original Sin Cara then referred to himself as Sin Cara Azul, and why was any of this happening? It was never really made clear. Azul and Negro fought a fairly underwhelming match at Hell in a Cell, followed by a mask versus mask match on SmackDown, which Negro lost and had to give up the gimmick. Ironically, Sin Cara Azul would then later leave WWE, and the character of Sin Cara would once again be taken up full-time by none other than Hunico, the Impersonator. Number 8, Mizdow and The Miz. After failing to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase on John Cena, Damien Sandow was a lost soul, burdened with the seemingly inescapable role of comedy jobber. He dressed up as Davy Crockett, LeBron James, and Vince McMahon, all to sad effect. Then one day, he dressed up as The Miz, and the rest was mystery. Mizdow was, on paper, supposed to be the terrible impersonator to The Miz, with his little version of the tag team belts, his little version of the Miz's Slammy, and his little version of the Miz's Trunks. The problem was, Damien Mizdow's clowning was amazing, and somehow, bafflingly, he turned the god-awful stunt gimmick into the best comedy act of the last decade. It became more and more apparent that Mizdow was the true star, and that The Miz was in fact the lookalike trailing in his wake. Number 7, the Mega Powers and the Meta Powers. So you know how Damien Sandow got himself thoroughly over with the fans as Mizdow, and he sort of did that all by himself? You know how he turned on The Miz at WrestleMania 31 to a genuinely huge pop, and then the fans were clamoring to see what next from Damien Sandow now that he's his own man? Well, turns out he's Macho Mandow. That's what. That's what. The lesson WWE gleaned from Mizdow wasn't that the fans respected Sandow for doing a terrible gimmick well. They learned that the fans love terrible gimmicks, so they made him pretend to be Randy Savage. He joined Curtis Axel, who was pretending to be Hulk Hogan, and they formed the Meta Powers, a terrible impersonation of the Mega Powers. They appeared on one pay-per-view, the Payback Kickoff Show, where they lost to the Ascension, God Almighty. Number 6, Ric Flair and Lil Nate. Most young fans will recognise Charles Robinson as that sexy referee from WWE. I would, and you would too. Older fans, however, will remember his time as a WCW ref, one with a slightly peculiar fascination with the Nature Boy. In 1999, the dyed blonde ref allied himself with Flair's villainous Four Horsemen faction, helping them screw over their opponents. He even fought for them, coming to the ring in a black Ric Flair robe with Little Nature Boy written on the back, and he would ape Ric's mannerisms, including his strut and his woo! However, the gimmick would nearly kill him. One week, Big and Lil Nate faced off against Randy Savage and Medusa, when a botched elbow drop from Savage would crack several of Robinson's vertebrae, collapse one of his lungs, and put him on the shelf for months. Robinson still has a little bit of a hetero man crush on Flair, referenced after he, quotes, got overexcited at Payback this year, helping the Nature Boy's daughter to victory. Number 5, Sting and NWO Sting. Most impersonations are short-lived affairs designed with a single storyline in mind. WCW's fake Sting lasted 3 goddamn years. In 1996, Jeff Farmer dressed as the icon Sting to pull the wool over Lex Luger's eyes. Not difficult, Lex Luger is a dum-dum.
I don't know!
Attacking him, making both him and the fans believe that Sting had allied with the new white white-hot villains, the NWO. In the face of this appropriation of his likeness, the Stinger morphed into his most enduring incarnation, the Brandon Lee Crow rip-off Sting. You know, the dude with the white face paint. Of course, whenever original Sting changed his appearance, bogus Sting, aka NWO Sting, changed too, becoming a slightly shabbier version of the original. For the next few years, NWO Sting would just sort of hang around, lose most of his matches, be forgotten about when real Sting was there, and generally be a bit rubbish. But that's not the end of the story. Bizarrely, NWO Sting did really well in Japan. He started calling himself Extreme Sting, or Exterminator, and his popularity actually eclipsed that of the actual real Sting. What is going on? Number 4, Undertaker and Fake Undertaker. Brian Lee didn't have much luck in the WWF. He's mostly remembered as Chains, one part of the stable Disciples of the Apocalypse, a biker gang. It was rubbish. However, this wasn't Lee's first foray into the WWF. His first run led him to headlining SummerSlam. The bad news is, it was as the Fake Undertaker. The Undertaker had disappeared from WWF TV for the better part of 7 months in 1994, taking time off after the Royal Rumble to allow Mark Calloway's back to heal. In his absence, however, Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and the person who had first kayfabe brought the Undertaker into the WWF, announced that he had found a new Undertaker, one he controlled with money rather than his usual urn. It was an odd storyline, which culminated with the Undertaker returning for a match with the Imposter at SummerSlam. Even though the spectacle of the dead man's resurrection was cool, if camper than a Kenneth Williams Batman, the match itself was a glacially paced dud, and all fans were happy to see the back of Lee's Greenhorn Taker. And speaking of the Brothers of Destruction, number 3, Kane and Fake Kane. Luke Gallows is back in WWE. They lured him back, and for the love of God, I do not know how they did it. Well, money, but they didn't exactly give him many treasured memories on his first few runs with the company. Not only was he released when he had all the potential in the world when he was part of CM Punk's stable, not only did they package him at one point as the brain-damaged Festus, satire, but they also gave him this debut. In 2006, for a very stupid month in May to June, Kane was being tormented by voices, reminding him of May 19th. This was the date that Kay's kayfabe family kayfabe died in a kayfabe fire. It was also the release date of See No Evil, a new slasher flick starring Kane, but that had nothing to do with anything Shut Up. Turns out the voices belonged to an imposter Kane, who dressed in Kane's old clothes and mask and would attack him during matches. The two had a match at Vengeance, which rivaled the Taker-Taker match in terms of crowd apathy, and despite the imposter Kane getting the victory, the angle was deemed a flop by management and immediately scrapped. The next night on Raw, original Kane simply threw Fake Kane out of the arena, and that was that. Number 2, Goldberg and Gillberg. Gillberg was WWF's attempt at the comedy. During the Monday Night Wars, Goldberg had become an unstoppable money-making machine, plowing through opponents and generating a tornado of crowd support. His undefeated streak slowly but surely became a ratings-pulling juggernaut in the industry, and the WWF desperately needed to make some sort of counterattack. That's... oh dear. Gillberg would walk through backstage like Goldberg, pull snarly faces like Goldberg. He'd have sparklers and fire extinguishers instead of pyro. He'd say who's first instead of who's next. Fun fact, Gillberg is still in the record books as the longest reigning light heavyweight champion of all time in WWF. It is a bad world we live in. And number 1, Diesel and Razor Ramon and Fake Diesel and Fake Razor Ramon. Well, this was a bad idea. Razor Ramon and Diesel were two of the WWF's hottest properties in 1996 when they left a more lucrative contract at WCW. Their absence left a huge hole in the company, and what stung even more was the fact that Hall and Nash were acting like their old WWF characters on WCW television. Not only did WWF sue, successfully in order to get them to stop, but they also put into action one of their dumbest ideas in the history of derp. Because they own the rights to the names Razor Ramon and Diesel, WWF advertised that Diesel and Razor Ramon would be making an appearance on Monday Night Raw, despite both men also being advertised for WCW Nitro. Confused, fans turned in to see these two men. Apparently, Razor and Diesel were like Doctor Who and had regenerated into Poundland versions of themselves, like the two much-beloved characters had somehow been put through the wrong wash. The gimmick unbelievably lasted until the Royal Rumble 1997, despite being as welcome as a fart in church, as JR himself would put it. Fake Razor left the company when his one-year contract expired, but Fake Diesel found slightly better fortune, going on to become the Big Red Machine, Kane. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter here. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.